Hi, my name is Laurel, and I'm what people refer to as a detransitioner, meaning I'm back to living as my birth sex after going through a period of time where I lived according to the delusion I was under that I was a female trapped in a male body. I lived my entire life with this belief that I was somehow a female mind, a female soul trapped in a male body. I spent my entire childhood and teenage years and early 20s and 30s praying every night that I could somehow wake up with a miracle to be in the right body. It never happened, so when I was in my late 30s and I discovered that medical transition was a possibility for me, I went that route. I took hormones. I even had gender reassignment surgery to cause my body to match how I felt inside. Although it could never fully match. I could never fully be a woman.
Hold on, there's another clip I want to play for you from him. Let me get it uploaded. I appreciate his vulnerability, sharing his story. It matters. These stories matter. People, sharing this matters, especially in today's climate. It's where these conversations are happening. I think it's a great way to have more conversation with people sharing their story who've actually lived it. Let's go to the next video.
I wish so bad that the trans community would listen to us detransitioners more, because we have a lot of wisdom that we gained through that path. Those of us who managed to see enough of the puzzle to come out on the other side and are now back to living as our born gender, while you may see us as something that discredits your validity, we were there, we felt the same way.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is when there's an agenda, when there are people who I want to be very clear. I think there's an agenda. There always has been, and there always will be. There's an agenda, but there are people who are like him, feeling these things in real time. It's real. So it's more difficult for them to see it as an agenda and for them to be as understanding of the challenges they face if they continue to push for what they're feeling, rather than getting help with understanding, like, hey, even though you feel that way, that's not what you are, and that's not what you should pursue. And because there's an agenda, the agenda is going to support it. There's so much information out about how damaging this is, right? When these people are going through these procedures, they're going to be on medication for the rest of their lives. So the pharmacy industry is making a lot of money. The surgeons are making a lot of money. And honestly, they're just practicing. They're practicing medicine. They're practicing on these people, these gender reassignment surgeries. And I'm glad that this gentleman, he called it what it is. It is a form of delusion. It really is. And unfortunately, it's looked at in a harsh way to say to someone like, hey, this is a delusion. But when you just look at the word for its meaning, it's not being rude. It's properly diagnosing what they're thinking and what they're feeling is a delusion. To think you're trapped in the wrong body and you need to transition into something else to make you feel like you are who you are. And he was saying, like, many nights he prayed. Like, I can't even imagine the frustration and the turmoil that he was going through to feel that way, to, like he's praying to be in the right body, to be, to have the right soul. And I don't know what type of resources were available to him, if he was getting help, the kind of environment he grew up in, like his child. I don't know any of that. All I know is I have things that I wrestle with in terms of just like frustrations, nothing to do with my sexuality or anything like that. I just may be irritated with a habit that I find myself kind of getting in more often than I'd like. And I know the frustration of just that alone. I can't imagine if I would be, confused about or just feeling like I'm in the wrong body. Like I can't imagine the frustration that I would feel from something like that. So I'm able to even though I've never felt that, I'm able to have compassion and I can't remember if it's empathy or sympathy, but either way, empathize or sympathize with them because that has to be tormenting, and I appreciate him sharing. I understand because there's an agenda out there, they're not going to be welcoming of someone who detransitioned because now it goes against what they feel. It's like, it's shedding light on their brokenness. It's shedding light on their confusion, and they don't want to hear that. It's irritating. Of course, someone who's, and I'm glad he still shared because someone can still benefit from it, even though many disagree. I'm gonna play another clip for you all. Even though, many are rejecting it and disagree with him and don't want to hear what he has to say, still sharing it is important because someone may be helped from it. I'm glad he's still sharing. Let me play this last clip.
I'm not going to move on because you just told me not to cut you off, but but of course, it's fine. So my point...
This is more of a debate platform.
...would be that I never said to treat anyone ill, right? I think we can rewind the tapes and see that I never once suggested that. I actually think that it's worse to take a child who is a child. I have a child. Do you have a child?
I have 2 children.
Okay, so my child, she's a little girl. She's 10 years old. She loves sports, and she loves doing her makeup and hair. I am deeply uncomfortable with the idea that if a child comes up to someone saying, today I feel like a boy, well, what does that even mean? What does that mean?
I can actually answer.
What does it mean to feel like something that you're not? Okay? When we talk about whether or not people are treated with dignity, I agree with you. I do not think that it's okay to be harmful or disrespectful to people because you don't understand them.
Right.
I think that the left does that far more to the right than vice versa, actually. I think that if you were to...
I really dislike when people get into the left and the right conversation as if one is righteous and one is unrighteous. Listen, I'm gonna tell you, these political sides are just as wicked and just as wayward as each other. And we've seen that. We've had a Democrat president, and we have a Republican president. We've seen the wickedness that takes place in all of these administrations. So, in both sides, like we've seen people on the right side talking crazy, talking wicked and hateful and racist, and we've seen the left side. So her saying the left side do this more than the right, I'm not feeling that at all. Let's just keep the main thing. Talk about this topic. Stop trying to make it political.
Peel back the layers of actual pain that people go through, taking a few more years to speak to someone about whether or not they actually need this physical change, rather than jumping them right into something that is irreversible.
They never need it.
Let's be clear, in many instances, causes long-term regret, right? Definitely, hold on, without a doubt, it causes long-term pain and suffering to the physical body. These people have to be medicated forever. Forever. There is no going back.
Diabetics.
That was the point I was making. Like, you have to be medicated under prescription forever. And there is, the pharmacy industry that benefits from that. Did this lady just say it's the same as diabetics who have to be on medicine forever? That's crazy. Let me let them finish.
Diabetes is not a choice. You don't choose. You don't go into the doctor's office and say, you know what, today I feel like eating way too much sugar.
Transgenderism is not a choice. Having gender dysphoria is not a choice. And to answer the question of why, my personal idea is I think we push gender stereotypes way too hard. So if a little girl feels like a boy, it's because she's not identifying with what a girl is. If a boy is feeling like a girl, it's because he's not identifying with what they're being told a boy is.
So then why do we need transgenderism? Why can't we just tell kids there's no basis for male and female? You don't need to chop off your genitalia to now be considered a boy or a girl.
With kids, I'm not going to say chop off your boobs, little girl. I'm not going to do that.
But your base does do that.
I feel like
your base in California will take a child away from their parents and take them out of a classroom and transition them in secret.
Well,
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
I grew up with gender dysphoria, and I haven't done anything. I'm not on any testosterone. I didn't do anything to my body, but I still live with the.
Kudos to her for being transparent. And this is the part of these conversations that I really enjoy. I'm gonna let her let her talk, because I want to hear what she has to say. But honestly, I think it takes maturity and it takes coming off the high horse to listen to people explain what they have experienced or are experiencing. Because I've never experienced it, there's only so much I'll be able to understand, so I do a better job listening. It doesn't mean I change my mind about what's right and what's wrong. It doesn't mean I go against God about what's right and what's wrong. But I do take the time to listen and to be compassionate, be understanding, and give dignity to people who are having different experiences than I am. But let me let her speak, because I feel like she's about to let us in on some good stuff.
Gender dysphoria, it wasn't a choice. And I honestly forgot your question a little bit. But your base, from what I've seen, like demonizes it. I was sent to conversion therapy in the woods for this and being told I was a demon over and over and over again. Like,
okay,
that's more damaging, I think, than sending kids to therapy to talk about it.
I would firmly agree that is not okay. What happened to you is awful, and I'm sorry that happened to you.
But can you acknowledge that the side that you're on kind of encourages that?
I think that if we were to be having a better conversation about treatment, that would happen less often, right? But because the left has this all or nothing approach to it, it is, if we don't completely agree with transitioning everybody, and I'm not just talking about children, if we don't completely agree with transitioning people and affirming them and saying their chosen pronouns, then we are labeled as bigots, we're labeled as hateful. You decided that I was hateful the moment that you sat down.
You literally just said that you wouldn't call them what they want to be called. I do find that to be hateful. I think a lot of people find that to be hateful.
I think it's more hateful to affirm someone's mental delusion. I do feel that way.
And that's the unkindness that we're talking about. Thank you for illustrating it.
And this is where the challenge comes in. When you call it what it is, they don't like that, because to them, it's a truth to them. It's a reality to them. And the delusion is, like, calling it a mental delusion is offensive. And that's where the problem comes in. I do think once you realize, like, hey, this is offensive to them, you state it where you are with it. And now you have to either remove yourself from the conversation or speak to them in terms that doesn't remove the diagnosis or the truth, but in a way that's less offensive, because you want to get to a place where they can trust you and in hopes that they will receive truth from you. And I'm not saying you deny the depth of the delusion. I'm not saying that at all, but you have to use wisdom. You have to, and some people, I'm gonna be very clear, no matter how kind you are, no matter how sincere you are with them about these conversations, they're gonna call you hateful because you disagree. That's just what it is. They're gonna call you hateful. I've seen people who say, I understand your plight, but I don't think a girl can be a boy or a boy can be a girl, and vice versa with men and women. And they're like, well, it's because you're hateful. It's like, how's that hateful? I just disagree. But when they disagree with you, it's not hateful. So in situations like that, you're not going to win or be able to help a person like that out. But the people who are open-minded, the people who are trying to find help, like the young lady who I really appreciate her sharing. She said that she dealt with gender dysphoria. And she said that, she's not on any medicine, she didn't do any surgeries, and she went through conversion therapy, which I don't think is healthy either. Telling someone they have a demon, I do think it's spiritual. I do think that there's some mental unwellness there, but you don't do that to children. You have to be, and she said, you have conversations with them. Yeah, you send them to a therapist, you talk, you pray for them, you remind them of God's creation, and you hope that as they see the skies, as they see the order of life with nature and with animals and with how reproduction happens and procreation happens, you'd hope that their heart will will open and be softened to truth, and help them understand, like, hey, I do feel these ways, I do struggle with this, but God is right about me. He says I'm a woman, so I'm a woman. My biology says I'm a woman, I'm a woman. My biology says I'm a man. God says he created man and woman. And, like, you hope that their hearts would be open to it, but you have to be respectful. You have to lean into these conversations with compassion, and not with like an agenda of like, I'm going to convert you, or I'm going to force change your mind. No, lean into these conversations with love. Like, God is love. He's also just. He's not only love, and he's also a God of justice, a God of righteousness, mercy, and truth, and grace, and all those things. So we don't use love as an excuse to pass over on sin, or to look over someone's delusion. But we do use love as a means to represent God and to draw a person closer to God, not to us, but to God, so that they could see that they were made in his image and likeness with dignity, just as they are. And that's one of the challenges that we face, not just as believers. And I also believe, like, she was talking about, the left and the right, Republicans, Democrats, and all this. And that's where we also go wrong. We try to say, well, the right do it this way and the left does it that way. I just want to represent Jesus. I'm not ignorant of the fact that there are policies on certain sides that I don't agree with. But I'm also not an ambassador of a political party. I'm an ambassador of Christ first, because I know these political parties have agendas. They seek to do things to gain control, to gain power, to gain wealth, be greedy. They're not Christ-centered organizations and parties, the right or the left. So I just want to put that part to bed. Like, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Not Republican, not Democrat. Jesus is the way. And it's okay for you to agree with certain policies from these sides. But again, we are to lead with the truth and the love of Christ. That's what 1 John says, that Christ came in with grace and truth, giving us what we don't deserve. But anyways, I don't want to make this a Bible study. But my point is that, we need to hear from people who have experienced this. The gentleman who detransitioned, his voice matters. And the fact that he has something to say, like he said, he has wisdom. He's been on both sides. He was not fulfilled with changing his body to what he felt. And ultimately he realized that wasn't key. He is a man. And we have to hear them out. We have to have these conversations. And we have to, most importantly, lean into these conversations with love, be praying for people, and sharing the gospel. Because it is the gospel that demonstrates God's power to those who believe on it. That's what Acts 1:16 says. But as always, I appreciate y'all tapping in. Make sure you check us out online. We're at www.there'shopebrand.com. There's plenty of merch on there. We are here to remind the world that there's hope in God. We do that through content. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we do that through apparel. Go online, www.there'shope.com. Grab some merch. The details are also in the description. All right, y'all. I'll catch y'all in the next video. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comment section.